Hello, this is Allie with the Perception Traders, author of The Perception Diet, and today we have part 2 of what is the self, and if you have not already watched part 1, please go and do that. So in part 1, we talked about consciousness, became aware of itself, right, which is already a separation, that's already an experience, and then in order to learn about itself, it realized, I'm going to have to take myself completely apart, okay? And we can understand this completely if we look at the body. If we look at the way that we humans understand anything, right? We understand the whole of the human body because we have taken it completely apart. Yes? Because we understand how each individual component of the body works, we understand how the body works. And I mean, I'm saying that loosely in the sense that I don't necessarily think that like medicine or most people actually understand how the body works. However, the more we take the body apart and understand how each component part functions, the better we understand how the whole functions. The more we understand how the whole functions, the better we understand how each component part functions. Anytime we want to understand how something works, we take it apart. We look at its component parts, and in doing that, if we do this through the lens of each of these component parts inform the whole, and I'm looking at the component parts not for the complete answer, but for a piece of the answer, and I see all of this in the context of the whole, we understand the whole better. So this is exactly how creation is playing out. We are a projection of all the infinite possibilities, of all the information that Source has about itself from the void, from the womb, because every experience that we have is informing the void about the potential for even more experience. So this is why it is my theory, and I think a lot of everyone's theory, that the universe is still expanding. Because it's expanding because every single time there is an experience, more information is had. More information is created. There is more information that Source now has about itself through every experience. And in every experience, that information is fed back to the void, which is the womb of creation, which is essentially where all the potentialities lie. So again, the void is structureless, formless. It is pure potentiality. Nothing has... There has been no separation, there has been no structure, there has been no form created. Everything is possible. And from that is projected down. All of those potentialities, all those separate potentialities separate from themselves and become the experience of life. Okay? So we see this in the as above, so below situation, right? That in order to have an experience, there has to be a structure. In order to learn about something, we need to, on a level, get rid of variables, get rid of what this thing isn't, so that we can learn about what it is. But where this gets confusing is that everything is connected. There is no true separation. So just like we talked about in the last video, right? There isn't like a part of consciousness that is separate, that is looking at consciousness, and then this part of consciousness that is being looked at. It's all one thing. It's nested in itself. So that's why we got to think of this, again, as like a parable. We can't think of it that these words are truly getting the message across, because they're not, okay? But it helps us get somewhere in our minds where we can start to feel and put these understandings together, okay? So it is the same thing with life experience. So again, the void is the potential. So there is no structure, no form. In order for that potential to play itself out, it has to separate itself out from the potential of everything else. There needs to be structure. Light has to operate in a slightly different way than sound operates. Yes? So in order for there to be an experience, in order for there to be an experience at all where we can get information about ourselves, because again, it is the taking everything apart in the context of the whole that we understand the whole. So this is, right, this is what Source is doing. We are Source. taking ourselves apart to understand ourselves. We take it apart not to say that the component parts are the thing, but that the component parts all explain what this whole thing is. So the component parts, again, are not separate. Yes, we are not separate from source, nor are we all of source. We are both. We are a separated potentiality. We are a singularity of source. So, right, this womb of creation into creation, what does this have to do with the self? Okay, this explains why everyone who thinks there's only the higher self are technically correct, and this explains why everyone thinks that there's only the relative self are also correct, but they're not completely correct. The true answer is there is both. We are both. All that is and completely relative. So in life, right, there are structures. So this is when in our universe, from our womb, and this is what I'm saying too, is like I don't know that there's necessarily one void and one creation. Yes, there's probably gabillions of voids, expanding forever, infinite voids and infinite projections from that void, forever and ever and ever, right? It's just these things are just really difficult for us to wrap our minds around. But our specific void creates our specific multiverse, creates our specific universe, creates our specific world. These are all, right, further and further specific projections from all the information potentialities we already have. So the smaller we get, we need to understand that's indicative of how much information we already have. The more specific we get, the smaller and more infinitesimal the structure is. It is a reflection of how much information we already have in void. Yes? So when all we knew was one thing, sound, right? That was a massive projection. That was a massive creation. Light, massive creation. An amoeba, so small, so specific. Yes? Meaning there has to be so much information that's being projected out from the void to create something so tiny, right? We're knowing more and more and more and more and more and more and more about ourselves through every experience that we're having, which is creating all this information, which creates the potential for more experience to be projected into the reality. Yes? So what you are as a self, okay, is just like everything else in this world, in our universe. You are connected to the whole. You are not something outside of itself looking at itself. You are a part of this, meaning there are the natural laws and the universal laws that govern the structure of this reality that we live in. Otherwise, there could be no experience. Okay? So there are the laws of this reality that we live in, and they apply to you as a self. That is the universal perspective of you. That is your higher self. The part of you that has awareness of your connection to everything. That there is no you outside of this. That there is no outside of this from you. That you are infinitely, like in the womb, connected to everything. That nothing is outside of you. All potentialities are you. You are all potentialities. At the same time, so this is where the paradox of life comes in. The exact same time, you are specific. You have structure and laws that are unique to only you. So you are at once completely relative. Yes? Your eye color, your hair color, where you were born, all of your experiences, you are a singularity. You were one of the potentials in the void that got projected into life to have an experience. And in that experience, you doing what you are doing in your life, you thinking what you think in your life, you being what you are in your life is new information. And it's all being fed back to the void, which is then creating more and more and more projections. Okay? So this is what is so exciting about this talk about the self. So if we try to boil the self down to what is the self, it makes perfect sense that some people say it's nothing, right? Because if we look and we try and break it down, right? And we break it down and break it down and break it down and break it down and break it down, we can break it down forever until it almost appears as though there's nothing there. Because if we keep removing, this is not me, okay, get rid of that, get rid of this, get rid of this, get rid of this, get rid of this. Okay, so this is this separation without context that gets us all messed up, right? The people that are looking for themselves and can't find it because they're like, well, I listen to Led Zeppelin. Well, that's not who I am. Lots of people listen to Led Zeppelin. Well, I like this color. Well, that's not who I am. Lots of people like that color. Well, I was born here and well, that doesn't mean, that's not who, but, right? We keep dividing, saying, okay, that's not it, that's not it, that's not it. We're not going to find it. Because absolutely, you are a specific amalgamation of a bunch of variables. Yes? It is the specific combination of everything that you are in your experience that makes the relative you the relative you. So again, the more we try and take you apart to find just the thing or the word or the specific thing that you are, you're never going to find it, because that doesn't exist in the relative. The relative is the expanded potential. It's you having an experience that has never been had before. The purpose of you being the relative you is to feed back the information of you having your specific experience that no one else can have, no one else ever has had, no one else ever will have, back to void to learn more about itself as consciousness. So literally everything that you are, everything that you do, every experience you have is expanding consciousness. It is the singularity experience that has never happened before and never will happen again that is feeding the information of the universe back to itself. So this is why if you go looking for yourself as a specific thing, you will never find you, because you are a composition. Yes? Your musical taste, your shirt color preference, your where you were born, where you come from, what you like, what you don't like, what you're interested in, what you're not interested in. It is all of those things put together that make up who you are on the relative front, that make up the thread of the tapestry that you represent. You are a composition. And it is that specific composition that makes you so specific that you can have such a specific experience, which then creates the conditions for information that has never been had before. You are the unique composition that you are, making you incredibly specific, right? So again, think of it as above, so below. All of this plays in. There's all of these variables that so many other people have, right? These universal variables, universal things. Led Zeppelin, lots of people like that. So there's like all of these people that like it. But is there someone who likes Led Zeppelin who has exactly your eye color, exactly your hair color, exactly every single experience that you've had, likes all your favorite colors, is interested in the things that you're interested in, hates the things that you hate? No. So you see? We have all of these variables, and it's how we put them together in all these different ways that create the singular experience. So again, the natural laws apply to all of us because we live in this structure. In order to have this experience, in order for you to have your relative experience, there has to be a structure. Yes? And because of the law of connection, we are all operating under the same laws. So the universal laws and the natural laws apply to all of us. And that informs, to a degree, our relative experience. So this is why a lot of people want to check out, okay, so now let's talk about this, right? Why is it that so many people want to transcend the individual self? Okay? The reason that we all want to transcend the individual self or want to believe that the individual self doesn't exist is because, again, there's this sense that the individual self means that I'm separated out from everything else. Means that I'm separate. And we don't want to be separate. We don't want to feel separate because we know in our hearts, in our souls, in our beings that that is not true. That being a self doesn't actually separate us. But it's because we believe that being a self means that we're separated out from everything else, that when we start to get onto these universal principles and these universal laws and the universal perspective, it's going to feel so much better because it's closer to the truth from our relative vantage point. When we are hanging out in universal perspective, we are all connected, we are all one, this is all the same, there is no difference between you and me. That's closer to the truth of source and of void where we come from. We're all trying to get home, we're all trying to get to the void. It's closer to the source of void, where all pure potentiality exists, there's no form, there's no structure, and everything's just connected. But in order to understand that, in order to have an experience of connection, we have to be separated. So what most people are saying is they're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. They're saying that because I want to feel unified, because I want to feel like I'm home in the void, back in potentiality, back in pure potentiality with no form, no structure, no rules, no rigid, and nothing between me and you, I'm going to try and get rid of this relative self, which is the thing that's making me different. No. It's your relative self that allows you to have a universal experience. Without the relative perspective, you don't know that you're connected. You can't have a feeling of being connected. And without feeling disconnected, you don't know what feeling connected feels like. So we are all having this relative experience. And it is not the ultimate truth, but it's not true either. Each and every single relative experience is important for two reasons. Number one, it is new information generating. You being what you are, doing what you're doing in your lifetime that only you can do with all the specific composition that makes up you are a singularity. And that singularity is information to the existence, to the source, about source, that it can only have because of you. That is expansion of consciousness. That is why the universe is expanding. Because of you. That's why this life is so important. The second thing is that in order to understand anything, we have to take it apart and have an experience of the part. So you being your separate self from everyone and everything else is the reason there can be a connection, is the reason that source can know anything about itself. It is the only reason that connection can exist, is because there is disconnection. The only reason that alignment can exist is because of out of alignment. The poles are necessary. So don't get caught up in wanting to believe that you're 100% universal or that you're 100% relative. Because again, most people who want to believe that they're 100% universal just have had such a painful relative experience that they can't understand how this could be divine. And that is the work that needs to be done. If you want to abdicate into I don't exist, we're all connected, there is no you, there is no me, we're all just one, you're forgetting who you are. And you're denying so much of reality, and you're going to be in pain because of that. There is a reason that you are an individual self, and you need to learn to unite your relative as being a divine experience. That there is no imperfection in this world. Okay? People who want to believe they're all relative are in pain and don't understand the laws of the universe. They don't understand the universal structure. They want to believe the universal structure doesn't exist, or that if they are a part of the universal structure that it's going to hold them back from what they want. So you need to go and reintegrate with the universal. You need to understand the universal laws and principles and start living by them. Those are the two things. And when you understand that it's both, you're relative and universal, and these two things need to be united, that is when you're going to start to feel peace about the self. All right? So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, please leave those down below. Like, share, subscribe. and I'll see you in the next video.